You're not family anymore. That's the line my mom texted me at 2:17 p.m. on a gray Tuesday, right after I spent 6 months salvaging her hotel's reputation from a PR disaster she caused. One sentence, 10 words, enough to slice me clean out of the family tree I helped hold upright. If you've ever felt like a ghost in your own family, like the people who were supposed to protect you were the ones who poisoned the well, stay. You need to hear this, because nothing exploded. It all unraveled, quietly, with a text, a will, and something buried beneath decades of silence. I'm Seraphina Voss. I'm 32. I live in Seattle, and I tell other people's stories for a living. Investigative journalism is supposed to make you cynical, hardened, but nothing could have prepared me for this. And the worst part? This isn't where it began. Not even close. Rain ticked against the window pane like a metronome set to grief. The light outside was flat and cold, the kind of Portland sky that never quite decides if it wants to rain or cry. I stared at my phone. The message was still there, glowing with surgical clarity. You're not family anymore. Don't contact me again. Mom. No greeting, no explanation, just that. My thumb hovered over the screen. I didn't delete it. I couldn't. Instead, I reread it for the 11th time. My stomach coiled, not from shock. I'd lived with her ice long enough to stop expecting warmth, but from the precision of it. This wasn't rage. It was strategy, disownment like a business transaction. I should have been furious or heartbroken. But all I felt was stillness. Until I noticed it, tucked beneath the edge of a magazine on my kitchen table. A manila envelope I hadn't opened yet. No return address. Just my name, printed in thin, impersonal type. My fingers twitched. I slid the envelope toward me slowly, as if it might bite. Inside, a photocopy of my grandfather's will. The first thing I saw was my name, then the black slash cutting through it. I didn't breathe. My fingers traced the line like it might change something, like maybe it would disappear if I touched it gently enough. But it stayed. My name, Seraphina Voss, erased. What the hell is this? My grandfather and I were close. Every summer he'd sneak me taffy from the hotel candy shop and call me his quiet compass. He used to say I saw through people faster than he ever could, so why would he cut me out? The legal header at the top didn't match the original I'd seen months before. I knew this document had been altered. It screamed tampering, but who sent it? And why now? Just days after that text from Mom. My chest tightened. In the corner of the kitchen, my coffee had gone cold. The cup still sat exactly where I left it hours ago, steam long since vanished, like the last bit of warmth in this house. I stood up slowly, my knees cracked, my jaw locked tight. Something about this timing felt wrong. I walked to my bookshelf and reached behind the spine of an old gardening book, where I kept backup files from my last investigation. I slid out a small USB drive and plugged it into my laptop. Click, search. Folder, Hotel Voss Legacy, PR Crisis. My grandfather's original will was in the press materials I'd collected. I opened it. There was my name, right there, in clean black serif. To my granddaughter Seraphina, I leave the Lakeview cabin and 15% equity in the Voss chain. I clicked back to the photocopy I'd just received. That line was gone, replaced with, all holdings revert to the primary family executor. The blood drained from my face. Primary family executor? There was only one person that could be, Clarice, my mother. The same woman who, just last week, told a boardroom full of shareholders that family meant accountability. Now I could hear her voice in my head. You always had such a flair for drama, Seraphina. It doesn't suit a Voss. She always said my work as a journalist was vulgar, too messy for the polished brand she built. But I was the one who'd rebuilt that brand after last year's eco-disaster. I was the one who stayed up for 72 hours crafting a press response when their hotel leaked toxins into a wetland, and she used every word I wrote. Now, she was rewriting me out of the story. I sank into the chair. My fingertips had gone numb. I didn't cry, but my body sagged like it might collapse under its own silence. Then, another detail, something subtle. On the edge of the photocopy, faint, almost missed, a watermark. Cale photo, my breath hitched. Cale. He was my best friend growing up. We lost touch after college, but I still remembered his photography watermark. What was his name doing on a forged legal document? My mind raced. I grabbed my phone, but stopped. The screen still displayed Mom's message. "You're not family anymore." I stared at it for a long time. Then I whispered to the empty room, "Then I guess you'll be just fine when I tell the world what you've done." And just like that, I realized this wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of something much darker. The rain had quieted by the time I got in the shower, but the chill lingered, creeping through the grout lines in the tile, settling in the spaces between my ribs. I stood under the water until my skin turned red and my fingers shriveled. But I wasn't trying to get clean. I was trying to forget that text, that envelope, that line through my name. Instead, my mind did what it always does when everything feels too sharp. It rewound, all the way back, to the cabin. I must have been 8, maybe 9. The air had that thick, piney sweetness you only find deep in Oregon's forest line, mixed with the distant crackle of the fire Cale and I were trying to build with damp kindling and zero clue what we were doing. He was crouched beside me, holding a too-big log like it was a sword. "Pretty sure that's not how cavemen did it," I teased, pushing up my sleeves. My sweatshirt smelled like old marshmallows and bug spray. Cale grinned. "Cavemen didn't have lighters. We're advanced." Behind us, the creak of the porch swing and the rhythmic tap of heels on planks meant one thing. Mom. I didn't have to look to know her arms were crossed, that her lips were pursed like she'd just bitten into a lemon, that she was judging us through her Ray-Bans. "Cale," she said, flat and clipped, "run along to your mother. Seraphina and I need a word." He shot me a look, half sorry, half scared, and ran. I stayed crouched, pretending to adjust the twigs, hoping she'd forget she wanted to talk. She didn't. "Up," she snapped. "Now." I rose. My sneakers made soft squelching noises against the wet dirt. "You're embarrassing yourself," she hissed. "And me. Honestly, look at you. Mud on your jeans, dirt under your nails. You want to act like you belong to this family? Start behaving like it." I remember blinking up at her. I'd been proud of that fire, and I didn't know why her words burned worse. All I could do was nod. That was always how it went. I learned to become quieter, cleaner, more polished, to remove myself before she could erase me. Now, decades later, I stood in my Seattle apartment with that same bone-deep ache in my chest. I pressed my forehead against the fogged-up bathroom mirror and whispered, "You never really saw me, did you?" The silence answered back. I toweled off and changed into something warm, slouchy sweater, worn jeans, socks thick enough to feel like armor. Then I padded into the living room and reached for the cedar box Grandpa gave me before he passed, the one he called my truth box. Inside, among old photos and scraps of handwritten notes, was a worn Polaroid. Me and Grandpa at the cabin. I was sitting on the porch swing in his lap, chocolate on my face, beaming like someone who still believed in birthdays and bedtime stories. He always made me feel wanted, like I was enough, even with scraped knees and missing teeth. But Clarice, her love came with conditions and consequences. I placed the photo face down. My fingers hovered over the box again, brushing something hard. The key. Small brass, still faintly stained from the time I spilled lemonade on it during a 4th of July party. Back then, I asked what it unlocked. Grandpa just winked and said, "Patience is part of the prize." Now I wasn't so sure what prize he meant or what patience was protecting. I tucked the key into my pocket and sank onto the couch, letting the city lights flicker through the blinds. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated, thumb twitching. Then I answered. "Seraphina Voss," I said cautiously. A pause, then static. And a click. Silence. I stared at the screen. No voicemail, no ID, nothing. The buzz of anxiety crawled under my skin. That's when it hit me. The envelope, the copy of the will, the watermark, Cale Photo 24. I hadn't spoken to Cale in over 3 years, not since Grandpa's funeral. He disappeared right after. No explanation, just gone. So why would his watermark be on a forged will? And if he didn't send it, who did? I called his old number, straight to voicemail. I typed his name into a browser, found a website for a photography studio in Hood River. A single photo on the homepage, a foggy tree line, quiet, haunting. My heart jumped. I emailed the studio. Just a short message. "Cale, it's Seraphina. I need to talk. Urgent. Sent. Then I stared at the inbox like it might spit out answers. I curled into the corner of the couch, wrapped in the soft throw Grandpa gave me, every breath tight. Outside, a siren wailed in the distance. A car passed slowly, headlights sweeping across the living room walls like a searchlight. Suddenly, that childhood memory returned again, but different this time. Not the fire, the safe. It was in Grandpa's den, hidden behind an old bookshelf, tucked behind framed photos of Clarice and Torrin's childhood milestones. Once, I asked about it. "Just boring documents," he said with a wink. "Nothing exciting." But I remember something strange now. After he died, Clarice locked that den up fast, said it was being renovated. She didn't let anyone in, not even for the funeral reception. That safe is still in the cabin, and if my gut is right, that's where the real truth is buried. I stood slowly, heart thumping. My eyes drifted to the window, then to the envelope again, still sitting on the table like a dare. Clarice erased me, but she didn't destroy me. And if that safe holds what I think it does, well, she's about to regret underestimating the daughter she trained to dig for the truth. The road to the cabin was rougher than I remembered, rutted with years of rain and disuse. Pine needles blanketed the gravel like the forest was trying to reclaim it. Each turn felt like a memory uncoiling, slow and reluctant. I hadn't been back since the funeral, since the family stood in stiff black suits on the porch pretending to grieve, pretending not to notice when I sat alone at the edge of the yard, away from them. Now, the place felt like a time capsule sealed with dust and old lies. I pushed open the front door. It creaked on its hinges like it recognized me, reluctant but not resistant. The scent hit first: cedar, mildew, and something faintly metallic. Cold air slithered across the wooden floors as I stepped inside. The living room looked just as it did in the photos. Grandpa's recliner, the crooked lamp with the green shade, the mantel lined with faded family portraits. Everything preserved. Everything waiting. My boots left soft marks on the worn rug as I crossed to the bookshelf. Third shelf. Fourth photo. Behind it, the safe. It hadn't moved. Still tucked behind the shelf's false back. Still locked. I pulled the brass key from my coat pocket. It felt heavier now. Warmer somehow, like it had been waiting in my palm this whole time. Click. The door swung open with a breathy exhale like the past sighing into the room. Inside, a thick legal folder, a few yellowed envelopes, one leather-bound journal with Grandpa's initials etched faintly into the corner. I reached for the folder first. The paper was stiff, official, the will's original version, the one I remembered. My name was there, untouched, perfectly legible. I scanned it twice, my eyes catching every detail. My inheritance hadn't just been removed. The entire clause about the cabin and equity had been replaced with a catch-all phrase, reallocated to the primary bloodline. But this was the real one. So who changed it? My fingers trembled as I turned to the next page, and something slipped out. A letter. Unsealed. No name. Just a single sheet of paper, handwritten in thin, neat strokes. You'll find the truth if you know where to look, but not everyone wants you to find it. Keep digging and trust no one, especially not the ones who smile too much. There was no signature, no date, just those lines, cryptic and chilling. I read it again and again. Who wrote this, and why hide it here? I folded it carefully, like it might shatter, and tucked it back between the pages. My heart pounded louder now, thudding against my ribs like it wanted out. I sat on the floor, back against the bookshelf, journal in my lap. The first entry was dated 4 years ago. Clarice thinks I don't see what she's doing, but I'm old, not blind. The girl deserves better than lies. If she ever needs it, I've left the trail. I blinked. The girl? He meant me. The pages blurred as I flipped through them. There were entries about Torrin's entitlement, about fudged numbers in the hotel's expansion. And Clarice, always Clarice, manipulating, maneuvering, bending the truth into something she could control. My breath caught when I found one passage circled in red ink. If this gets buried, it'll be because she found the files before Seraphina did. I just hope the safe outlasts her desperation. My fingers curled around the edge of the page, knuckles whitening. He knew. He knew they'd try to hide it. I pulled out my phone, snapped photos of everything, the will, the letter, the journal pages. I backed them up to cloud storage, encrypted and hidden behind a password no one in my family would ever guess. Grandpa, thank you. I was halfway to the door when my phone buzzed. A name lit up the screen. Torin. I froze. My brother never called unless he wanted something, usually money or forgiveness. I let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. Then I answered. Seraphina, he said. Voice too smooth, too light. Don't, I snapped. A pause. Then that fake chuckle he always used when he was lying. Look, I heard you went to the cabin. Thought we could talk, clear the air. My spine stiffened. Funny. Last time we spoke, you called me a liability in lipstick. He sighed. That was before. Things are different now. They're only different because I'm not staying quiet. Silence stretched. Then his voice lowered. You really want to start this war? You're not going to win it, Sarah. Something in his tone, the weight, the warning, sent a pulse of fear straight through my chest. You already lost when you underestimated me, I said, fingers tightening around the journal. I'm trying to help you, he said. Walk away. This doesn't have to get ugly. I ended the call. The air inside the cabin felt colder now, like it had absorbed his voice, his threat. I shoved the files into my backpack, locked the safe again, and shut the door behind me. Outside, twilight had crept in. Shadows pooled beneath the trees, long and sharp. I stepped off the porch and paused. A car, black, parked at the edge of the trail, too clean, too still. It hadn't been there when I arrived. My pulse spiked. I turned slowly, pretending not to notice, then slid into my car and locked the doors. The engine started, headlights cutting through the dark like searchlights. In the rearview mirror, the other car didn't move. Not yet. But something told me it wasn't finished watching, and neither was I. By the time I made it back to Seattle, the sun had slipped behind a sheet of thick clouds, turning the skyline into a cold silhouette. I parked 2 blocks from my apartment just to be sure I wasn't followed. The black car hadn't tailed me, but I couldn't shake the feeling something had crawled into my shadow and stayed there. I triple-locked the door behind me, tossed my keys into the bowl, and stood in the silence. Not even the hum of the fridge, just the tick of the wall clock, sharp as a metronome, counting down to something I hadn't seen yet. I powered on my laptop and uploaded the photos from the cabin. Every page of Grandpa's journal, every version of the will. I backed it all up to 2 encrypted drives and sent copies to a contact I trusted at the Herald, just in case. I was still drafting a timeline of events when my screen blinked. A notification popped up. Breaking news. Voss Hotel's whistleblower scandal. My blood chilled. I clicked. The headline was impossible to miss. Seraphina Voss implicated in data leak exposing private client info. Beneath it, my photo. One I didn't recognize, one I didn't approve. I blinked hard. What the hell? My name, my credentials, the firm I freelance for, all there, laid out like a hit list. They even quoted me, except the quote wasn't mine. I gripped the sides of my laptop so hard my fingers ached. My phone vibrated. Cale. I answered without thinking. Did you see it? He asked, voice tight, breath quick. I'm looking at it. I didn't send that watermark, Sarah, I swear. Someone must have taken an old proof, attached it to that fake will. It wasn't me. I believed him. His voice didn't tremble. Mine did. I just uploaded the real documents, I said. Grandpa's original will, his journal. They tried to bury it. That article, it's a lie. I heard him exhale like he'd been punched. I've seen this playbook before, I added. Clarice doesn't fight clean. I stared at the news site. The article had already been picked up by 3 other outlets. People were commenting, speculating, asking for my resignation. I didn't leak anything, I whispered, more to myself than to him. I was going to expose them. And now, I was the scandal. Cale went quiet. Then, I'll help however I can. Just be careful. You know what she's capable of. I hung up, my hands shaking. I sat perfectly still, but inside I was unraveling. This wasn't damage control. This was a premeditated strike. I opened my voicemail, heart thudding. 7 new messages. The first was from a former client. Cold, clipped. Don't contact us again. The next few were worse. Disgust, betrayal, threats of lawsuits. But it was the 6th one that hit the hardest. Clarice. You always did enjoy playing victim. This is what happens when you overstep, Seraphina. You're not part of this family anymore, so stop trying to take what doesn't belong to you. Her voice was so calm, so calculated, like she was hosting a brunch, not destroying my career. I gripped the edge of the counter, nails digging into the marble. A drop of sweat trickled down my back. I had proof. I had Grandpa's handwriting, the original will, the anonymous letter. I had motive, but what I didn't have yet was leverage, and they knew it. They were always 5 steps ahead, turning the story before I even finished writing it. But this time, they left fingerprints. I pulled up the metadata on the article, traced the hosting path, sourced the first publication timestamp. My jaw clenched. It was uploaded from a proxy server in Lake Oswego, Torrens neighborhood. My brother. I closed my eyes and saw him as a boy, charming, golden-haired, always getting away with everything. The bruises I covered for him, the lies I defended, the way he smiled when he knew he'd won. It had always been a game to him. Now he'd raised the stakes. I remembered something Grandpa once said during a thunderstorm at the cabin. I was 12, scared of the thunder, and he told me, "The louder they try to scare you, the more desperate they are. When people yell, it's 'cause they know they're losing control." This wasn't yelling. This was a surgical, silent cut. A message: stay out, or we'll ruin you. I walked to the window. The street was empty, but my skin still itched with surveillance. I pulled the curtain shut, heart pounding. Then I opened my laptop again. I clicked compose. 2, investigationscascadewatch.org. Subject urgent, data leak retaliation, Voss Hotels. I attached the files, the will, the forged one, Grandpa's journal, the letter, screenshots of the article, metadata timestamps, Clarice's voicemail. Before I hit send, I added one last line. If I disappear, you'll know where to start looking. I hovered for a second, then I clicked send, and just like that, I wasn't playing defense anymore. I was going to burn the whole thing down. But just as I shut my laptop, a final ping echoed from my phone. An image, no text, no number, just a photo. Me, leaving the cabin, taken from a distance, framed between the trees. My breath caught. I couldn't look away. Someone had followed me. Someone was still watching. I barely slept that night. I kept the lights on, the curtains drawn, and my laptop open beside me like a shield. The photo, the one of me leaving the cabin, burned in my mind like a brand. Someone had eyes on me, and they weren't hiding anymore. By sunrise, I knew what I had to do. The information in Grandpa's journal hinted at something deeper, something dirtier, buried inside the hotel business itself, something environmental, illegal, and I wasn't going to let them bury it too. I texted Cale at 7:04 a.m. You still have that drone? Meet me. Hotel site. Noon. His reply came seconds later. I'm in. The construction site was 20 miles outside Portland, just far enough to feel isolated, just close enough to pretend it was still part of the city's luxury vision. Voss Hotel's flagship eco-resort. Except what I saw as I pulled up didn't scream sustainability. Cement trucks sat idle. Piles of debris were covered in tarps. And the air, it stank. Chemical, metallic, like runoff and bleach. I parked behind a thicket of brush and climbed out, tucking my camera into my jacket. Cale was already there, crouched behind an abandoned storage trailer, hoodie up, eyes scanning. You look like a conspiracy theorist, I whispered. He gave me a small smile. And you look like someone who didn't sleep. I didn't respond. Instead, I pointed toward the site's southern edge. That slope, see the drain pipe? Yeah. Something's leaking, and it's not rainwater. He nodded. Drone's ready. You sure you want to do this now? I glanced toward the skeletal hotel frame in the distance, half built, half forgotten. Yeah, I said. I'm done waiting. Cale launched the drone. It rose with a soft mechanical hum, slicing through the morning haze like a silent hawk. I crouched beside him, watching the live feed on his tablet. At first, just steel beams, workers in hard hats, stacks of lumber. Then the drone dipped lower, past the main site, behind the utility fencing, and there it was. Tanks. 4 massive steel tanks half submerged in the ground, unmarked. One of them rusted through at the base. The soil around it was stained dark. Cale zoomed in. "That's not stormwater, that's chemical storage." "And it's not on the site plan," I muttered. "I checked." Just then, movement. 2 workers emerged from a prefab trailer, both in hazmat suits. One pointed toward the tanks. The other lit a cigarette with a shaking hand. Cale recorded everything. "They're dumping," he whispered. My skin prickled. I pulled out my Nikon and snapped shots through the chain link gaps. Angles, timestamps, faces. I felt it in my bones. This was it. The story beneath the scandal. The thing Grandpa hinted at when he wrote about fudged numbers and environmental compliance shortcuts. This wasn't just about cutting me out of the will. This was about hiding a crime. But just as I snapped one last photo, a voice barked from behind. "Hey, you're not authorized to be here!" I froze. Cale tucked the drone controller behind his back, but it was too late. A security guard stomped toward us, hand hovering over his belt like he expected a weapon. I stood up slowly. "Sorry, wrong turn. We were looking for—" He cut me off. "You need to leave, now." Cale gave a sheepish shrug. "Got it." We turned fast, walked even faster, breath caught between our teeth until we were back in the brush. Only when we reached the car did I let my shoulders drop. "That guy's wound tight," Cale said. "They all are, and they should be." I looked down at my camera, still clutched in my hand. The photos were still there, clear, unmistakable. Contamination, cover-up, corporate negligence. "I'm leaking this," I said. "Not through a blog, not through a tweet. I'm going to a real newsroom." Cale hesitated. "You sure?" I turned to him. "They framed me to protect this." His expression hardened. "Then let's make sure it blows up in their face." We drove back in silence. But it wasn't empty. It was heavy with strategy, memory. Somewhere between the freeway exits, my mind drifted, back to a moment from years ago. Me, 13, alone in Grandpa's study, reading his old clipping file, articles about oil spills, corporate lawsuits. One headline circled in red, "The Price of Silence." I remember asking him what it meant. He didn't answer, just looked at me with a sadness I didn't understand back then. Now I did. I dropped Cale at his apartment and headed home. I was halfway through editing the footage when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated, then picked up. Static. Then a voice. Low. Male. "Stop digging." Click. No name. No callback option. I sat frozen. That wasn't a bluff. That wasn't Clarice's voice. Or Torin's smug warning. That was someone else. And they were watching. I opened the files again, eyes scanning for something I missed. Then I saw it. One of the workers in the photo. His ID tag was flipped just enough to reveal a logo. Not Voss Hotels. Something else. A contracting firm. Out of state. Not part of the approved bid list for the project. And listed, 2 years ago, under one of Grandpa's canceled accounts. Someone had quietly brought them back in, without approval, without oversight. And now, they were threatening me. I leaned back, breath shallow. If Grandpa's suspicions were right, this wasn't just a scandal. It was the foundation of their empire, and if I pushed harder, someone would break. I didn't plan to see Torin that day, but some betrayals don't wait for your schedule. They just knock the breath out of you and leave you to crawl for the truth. It was late afternoon when I found him. A mutual acquaintance, someone I'd once mentored at the paper, tipped me off that Torin was meeting with the board at Voss HQ. Something about restructuring, which we both knew was code for covering tracks. I drove straight there. The parking lot gleamed under the cold Portland sun, every luxury car lined up like trophies. Torin's BMW was front and center. I waited in the lobby, pacing slow between the columns, pretending to read the art brochure in my hands. My heart thudded with each second. My jaw ached from clenching. Then, he stepped out of the elevator, tailored navy suit, polished smile, phone in hand like he was sealing the fate of some other unlucky soul. When he saw me, he stopped mid-step. "Well," he said, sliding his phone into his pocket. "If it isn't our family scandal." I didn't blink. "You framed me." He tilted his head like I'd just told him the weather. "Be specific." "The data leak, the altered will. You did it, you and Mom, but it has your fingerprints all over it." Still vague. I stepped closer, low and sharp. I traced the metadata. You used your proxy server from Lake Oswego. You uploaded the article that smeared me. He smiled wider. You dug into my computer history? Your mistake was thinking I wouldn't. He walked past me, slow and deliberate. You should have let it go, Sarah. My feet followed, even though every nerve in my body screamed to walk away. I rebuilt this company's reputation, I said. I saved Mom's legacy after that pipeline burst, and you both cut me out like I was disposable. He turned back. His face sharpened. Mask dropped. We didn't cut you out, he said. You never belonged. The words hit harder than I expected, but I didn't flinch. Grandpa thought differently, I said. He left me the cabin, part of the equity. You altered that will. You think a legal technicality is going to stop us? He said, voice low, teeth tight. Clarice had that rewritten the moment his signature was dry. It was never going to be yours. I swallowed hard. Then something shifted in his eyes, a flicker, a warning. And the leak? I asked. He laughed under his breath. Oh, that, he said. Let's just say, if you can't stop a story, you write it first. I could sue. Go ahead. We'll bury you in discovery requests. You'll run out of breath before we run out of money. My hands balled into fists. He stepped forward, his voice a whisper. You really think Grandpa would have left the company to someone like you? Someone who always needed saving? There it was, the cruelty, the truth behind the smirk. I stepped back, air shaking in my lungs. He leaned in. And just so you know, I was the one who planted the data. You should have seen your face when that story dropped. Almost made it worth it. I stared at him. The brother I once protected when he got in fights at school, the one I covered for after he totaled Dad's car, the one I thought might still have some ember of decency buried inside him. Gone. All that remained was ambition and venom. You just confessed, I said. No witnesses, he shrugged. I held up my phone, screen still recording. He froze. Not anymore, I said, voice low. Then I walked away. My legs felt unsteady as I pushed through the glass doors and stepped into the wind. The sky had turned steel gray, thick with the weight of a coming storm. I sat in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles burned. I should have felt triumphant, vindicated, but all I felt was grief, the quiet kind, the kind that settled in your chest and made a home there. I thought about the letter from the safe. Trust no one, especially not the ones who smile too much. I thought about the anonymous call, the threat, the photo of me at the cabin. And suddenly, Torin didn't feel like the only threat. There was still someone else behind the scenes, someone deeper. I opened the email draft on my phone, attached the recording, then paused. Not yet. Let him twist first. Let him feel the heat. I'd send it. But on my time. I drove home with the windows up, the heater blasting like it could push out the chill under my skin. When I got inside, my phone buzzed. Cale, I just finished scrubbing the drone footage. There's something you need to see. I called immediately. He picked up, breathless. The guy in the hazmat suit, the one near the tanks? Yeah? He's not on the employee list. Not Voss, not the contractor we flagged. I cross-referenced the image with some databases. My breath hitched. And? Cale's voice dropped. He's a private security consultant, former corporate fixer, linked to 3 cover-ups, including one where the whistleblower went missing. The floor shifted beneath me. Send me everything, I whispered. Cale's voice cracked. You sure you're safe? I didn't answer, because I wasn't. And now I knew. This wasn't just about family anymore. This was something else, something bigger, and I was in deeper than I ever intended. The photo Cale sent sat on my screen long after the call ended. A man in a hazmat suit, not on the official records, not listed under Voss Hotels, not part of any public bid, just there, a ghost in high resolution. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, too stiff to move. I replayed the drone footage on loop, frame by frame. He moved like he wasn't worried about being seen, like he thought no one would ever look. My heart thudded, not just with fear, but something colder, recognition, not of his face, but of his posture, his silence, the way some men carry power not through shouting, but through the promise of consequence. Whoever he wasn't just muscle. He was there to clean something up. And maybe that something was me. I shut the laptop, the hum of the fan still echoing in my ears. The apartment suddenly felt too quiet, like sound had been vacuumed out of the walls. Then came the knock. 3 sharp raps against the door. I didn't move. Not at first. It came again. I walked slowly toward it, heart in my throat, legs moving like I was underwater. I checked the peephole. Empty hallway. Nothing. I waited 10 more seconds before unlocking the deadbolt, inching the door open. There was no one there, just an envelope. No name, no stamp, tucked beneath the doormat like a secret waiting to be tripped. I shut the door fast, double-locked it, and took the envelope to the kitchen under the harsh pendant light. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed, "Stop digging. Next time it won't be a knock." I stared at the words until they blurred. My palms were damp, my throat dry. This wasn't a warning, it was a countdown. I turned off every light in the apartment, sat with my back against the front door, listening. Silence, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the rush of my own pulse in my ears. They were getting reckless, or confident, or maybe both. I didn't sleep. I waited until morning, until the sun crept over the rooftops like it was afraid to start the day. Then I texted Kale. "We need to meet. Today." We chose a public place, busy, loud, familiar, a coffee shop we used to study in years ago. I got there first, sat in the back beneath the giant menu board, fingers wrapped around a cup I didn't drink from. Kale slid into the booth across from me, dark circles under his eyes, camera bag slung over one shoulder. "I brought everything," he said quietly, "even the raw files." I nodded, sliding the envelope across the table. He opened it. Read it once, then again. His jaw clenched. "This isn't just intimidation. It's surveillance. They're watching you." "I know. They know we're working together." I didn't answer. We sat in silence, the buzz of espresso machines and soft indie music, a surreal soundtrack to what felt like an interrogation without a table. He looked up. "We have to go to the press now. I know a guy at Channel 5, he'll run it." "I'm not ready." "Why?" "Because they'll spin it. They'll paint me as a disgruntled daughter trying to claw back inheritance." "Isn't that what they're already doing?" I looked down at my coffee. My reflection wobbled across the surface. "Not yet, but they will." Kale leaned forward. "Then what are you waiting for?" I whispered, "A crack." "A crack?" "In their story, in their timeline. Something they can't explain." He stared at me like he wanted to argue, but didn't. Instead, he reached into his bag and pulled out a tablet. Pulled up the footage. Paused it at a frame I hadn't noticed before. The man in the hazmat suit, standing in front of a black SUV. There, on the rear window, faint but visible, a decal, a crest. With the initials VIG, Kale tapped it. "That's a private firm out of Nevada. They're not on any contractor list. They specialize in disaster remediation." I blinked. "You mean cover-ups?" "Yeah." "Who hired them?" He hesitated. I dug. "Only one name links to their retainer, Clarice." My stomach dropped. Not the company, not Torin, her. All this time I thought she was the face while he pulled strings behind the scenes. But this wasn't delegation. This was personal. The burner phones, the fake will, the smear campaign, and now this fixer, working for her. She wasn't protecting the company. She was protecting herself. Kale whispered, "She knows everything." And suddenly all I could hear was my own breath. Back at the apartment that night I moved differently. Slower, quieter. I unplugged the smart speaker. I taped over my webcam. I didn't turn on any lights, just sat in the dark, letting the weight of it all settle. And then, under the door, a shadow. Small, flickering. Another note? No. A USB. No label. No envelope. Just metal and silence. I stared at it for what felt like an hour before picking it up with the corner of a dish towel, like it might burn me. I slid it into an air-gapped laptop I hadn't used in years. Only one file, a video. It opened to grainy footage, surveillance cam quality. A hotel hallway. The timestamp, 4 years ago. Grandpa's floor. Then, a figure. Clarice, entering his suite at 2:04 a.m., staying exactly 7 minutes, leaving with a folder tucked beneath her arm. No sound, no context, but I knew what it was. The night before Grandpa's health took a sudden turn, the night the will changed. My blood turned to ice. My hand trembled over the trackpad. Who sent this? And why now? The door buzzed again. This time, no knock. Just the sound of someone walking away. The USB still sat beside my laptop like it could detonate at any moment. I'd watched the footage twice more since last night. Each time, the silence around Clarice's visit to Grandpa's suite at 2:04 a.m. only grew louder. The folder under her arm, the 7-minute gap, the timestamp from 4 years ago, the night everything changed. She'd stolen something, or switched it, and now I had proof. But proof meant nothing unless people saw it. I barely slept. I wrote like my life depended on it, because it did. The exposé unfolded in layers. Not just about the forged will or the environmental cover-up. This was about legacy, corruption wrapped in pearls and PR slogans. It was about what power did to people like my mother, how it turned blood into leverage. By dawn, it was done. Title: The Rot Beneath the Marble, Inside the Voss Hotel Empire. I hit send. The article, along with the drone footage, the will discrepancies, the timeline, and a screen grab from that surveillance video, went straight to a journalist I trusted at the Cascade Sentinel. Someone with reach. Someone not afraid of lawsuits. My hands shook as I shut my laptop. The silence afterward was unbearable. Then, 2 hours later, my phone lit up. Breaking: Cascade Sentinel investigation targets Voss Hotels in environmental inheritance fraud scandal. The headline sat bold and black across their homepage. My words, my research, there for the world to see. It was out. I stared at it for a long time, heart pounding like I'd just jumped from a cliff. I hadn't even stood up when the second notification hit, and the third. By noon, it had gone viral. Other outlets picked it up, embedding the video, quoting the journal entries, the contractor records. Reddit threads erupted. Former employees came forward anonymously, backing the environmental allegations. By 2 p.m., Voss Hotel Group's stock started falling. Not a crash, not yet, but a slide, the kind that builds. My phone buzzed. Cale. He didn't say anything when I answered, just exhaled. You did it. We did. A pause. They're going to hit back. I know. Still, I could hear the grin in his voice. But they're bleeding. I hung up and opened my email. Messages poured in. Reporters, former clients, even distant family members pretending they didn't once call me unstable. But one stood out, from Clarice Voss. Subject: Congratulations, no text. Just an attachment. I opened it. A photo. Me and Cale, from 2 days ago, sitting at the coffee shop, heads close, smiling like conspirators. Taken from outside, through the window. My stomach dropped. She wasn't threatening me anymore. She was warning Cale. I picked up my phone to call him, but it buzzed first. Did you get it? Cale asked, voice tight. She knows. I figured. She's not going to stop. Neither are we. Still, I couldn't ignore the shiver running down my spine. Clarice had always been strategic, surgical, but this wasn't defense. This was war. I sat in front of the TV, flipping to local news. They were outside Voss Hotel HQ now, cameras rolling, reporters shouting questions at a PR rep who looked like he hadn't slept. When he finally stepped up to the mic, his words were careful, pre-rehearsed. Ms. Voss denies all allegations and considers them part of a personal vendetta by a disgruntled former family member. I didn't react. But something twisted in my gut at those words. Not former employee, not distant relative, former family. Like she'd already rewritten history again, this time in the press. Still, I expected it. What I didn't expect was what came next. The reporter asked about the environmental violations. The PR rep hesitated. There's currently an internal investigation into those claims. We cannot comment further at this time. No denial, just a pause, a crack, exactly what I was waiting for. I sat back on the couch, let it settle. Then just as I was breathing again, my phone buzzed with a different tone. Voicemail, blocked number. I played it. The voice was familiar. Clarice. You think you've won something, you haven't. All you've done is set fire to your own name. And that boy, Cale, he doesn't know what he's stepped into. Click. No anger, just ice. I dropped the phone into my lap. The apartment felt smaller, the light harsher, like the walls had ears. Outside, a car slowed in front of my building, tinted windows. It didn't stop, just crawled past, watching. I locked every window, checked the deadbolt twice. Then I pulled out Grandpa's journal again, flipping to a page I hadn't paid attention to before. A line written in the margins, barely legible. If this gets out, they'll scramble. Watch for what's missing, what they hide, not just what they say. My eyes narrowed. What were they hiding now? I reopened the leaked construction bids Cale and I had traced earlier. The firm that appeared on site wasn't just hired secretly. It was paid through a shell account tied to an investor. Not the company. Not Clarice. Someone else. A name I didn't recognize. Yet. I opened a new browser tab, started digging again. And just then, another alert. Voss Hotels suspends executive leadership amid whistleblower fallout. Clarice Voss reportedly unreachable for comment. I read it twice. Clarice had vanished. And that meant one thing. She wasn't finished. She vanished. No press statement, no staged denial. Not even a smear campaign in my inbox. Clarice Voss, queen of spin, mistress of the last word, just disappeared. And I knew that meant she was planning something. I stared at the screen for hours that morning, reading every update about Voss Hotel's leadership hiatus. Lawyers were circling like vultures. The stock continued to dip. My article had cracked something wide open, and the people who used to call me delusional were now resharing my exposé like gospel. But silence from her wasn't victory. It was a trap. Still, when my phone buzzed at 11:17 a.m. and her name appeared on the screen, I froze. She never called directly, never left fingerprints. I let it ring once, twice, then picked up. Her voice was calm, too calm. Seraphina. I didn't answer. I thought we should talk, before this becomes unmanageable. The way she said it, like the whole thing was a scheduling conflict, not a legacy unraveling. Talk? I finally said. You mean before more of the truth gets out? A breath on the other end. Not quite a sigh. Not quite regret. I'm offering you something. A solution. A chance to step away from this while you still can. I laughed, short and sharp. Step away? You blackmailed me. You cut me out of my own grandfather's will. You tried to frame me for a data leak. She didn't flinch. I protected what I built, she said. And you, Seraphina, were never meant to inherit something you didn't understand. The old heat rose in my chest. That burn of every time she'd belittled me. Every time she'd looked at me like I was a PR liability instead of a daughter. I understand plenty now, I said. She exhaled slowly. I'm willing to offer you 10%. Equity. Retroactively applied. You walk away. No interviews. No more leaks. You and Cale get to disappear quietly. I blinked. There it was. The bribe dressed as benevolence. But it was the way she said Cale that made my blood run cold. Is that a threat? I asked. No, she said softly. It's a warning. A beat of silence passed. One I filled with every memory of her cold stares, of Torin's smug grin, of Grandpa's hand on my shoulder saying, She doesn't see you, but I do. I held the phone tighter. My thumb grazed the record button. What if I say no? Clarice didn't pause. Then I'll bury you, Seraphina. You and anyone stupid enough to stand beside you. The line went dead. I stood there for a full minute, phone still in my hand, her voice echoing through the corners of my mind. She wasn't running. She was baiting. Later that afternoon, I met Cale at his place. His kitchen was strewn with folders, timelines, tech gear, his version of a war room. He handed me a flash drive as I walked in. Encrypted audio backups, he said, plus metadata from the USB drop and the coffee shop photo. I nodded, but my hands trembled. She called, I said. His jaw tightened. What'd she say? She offered a deal, equity, if I disappear. He stared at me. Are you thinking about it? I shook my head. I'm thinking about what she's not saying. Cale leaned forward. What do you mean? I mean she's not denying the rest of it anymore, the environmental stuff, the will, even the surveillance. She's not playing defense. She's trying to close the book before someone else opens it. Someone like an investigator? Or someone we don't know yet. Cale blinked, then pointed at his laptop. There's more. That investor linked to the off-book contractor, the one who paid VIG. He just dumped half his shares this morning. What? He's running. He knows something. I sat down hard, the chair creaking under me. The room felt suddenly tighter. "She's setting up a fall guy," I whispered. "She'll sacrifice him to buy time, and if I take the deal now—" "You're sealing it shut," Cale finished. I nodded. I thought of the old letter again, the one that fell from Grandpa's file. Trust no one, especially the ones who smile too much. She'd used charm like camouflage my whole life, but now the mask was slipping. Still, part of me wavered. I could take the deal, walk away, start over, be safe. But then I thought of Grandpa, of the safe, of the letter, of the photo of me and Cale through the coffee shop window, and of what they'd already taken from me. I stood. Cale nodded once, quiet approval. I grabbed my bag, heart pounding, mind racing. As I reached the door, my phone buzzed again. Another email. No subject, no signature. Just 2 words. Too late. Attached was a video. I clicked play. It opened to footage of Cale's photography studio. Door open, shelves overturned. Someone had broken in. I turned to him, eyes wide. "Cale?" But he was already grabbing his keys. We ran. Cale's tires screeched as we turned the final corner. His studio came into view, its glass front cracked down the center like a lightning strike frozen in time. One of the side windows had been shattered inward, not out. A clean break. Purposeful. He didn't even park properly. Just threw the gear in neutral, jumped out, and sprinted up the steps. "Wait!" I called, but he was already inside. I followed him in, my boots crunching over glass shards scattered like confetti from a party no one survived. The place had been gutted. Lights knocked over, camera lenses smashed, memory cards ripped from their cases and tossed like junk mail. My stomach twisted as I watched Cale walk slowly toward his dark room. His shoulders, usually squared, had folded inward. Then he froze. The door to the dark room was open. Inside, a single photo hung from the drying wire. A photo of me. Not recent. Not even from this year. It was from college. One I never even remembered being taken. I was sitting on the floor of a dorm hallway, chin on my knees, crying. It hadn't been staged. I hadn't even known the camera was there. Cale stared at it like it had punched him in the chest. "They've had access for longer than we thought," he said, voice hollow. I walked over, the fluorescent lights above us flickering like they were struggling to breathe. There was something pinned to the wall behind the photo, another letter, typed. "You were never the target." He was. I backed away, my pulse loud in my ears. Whoever this was, it wasn't just Clarice anymore. This was someone else, watching both of us, anticipating every step. Cale sat down on the floor, one hand gripping his camera strap so tight I thought it might snap. "I thought it was about the story," he whispered. "The hotels, the inheritance." "It was," I said. "But now it's more. That name, the investor who funded the contractor." I still hadn't cracked it. I opened my laptop on the floor right there in the debris, using my phone as a hotspot. Cale leaned in as I typed, scanning through LLC filings, tax records, shell accounts. Then, there it was. One document buried in a quarterly shareholder packet, an alias tied to offshore accounts. Cross-referenced with an old photo Cale still had. The man in the SUV, the silent figure from the drone footage, not hired by Clarice, funding her. I read the name aloud. Cale went pale. He was at the funeral. "What?" He nodded. "I remember. Tall, black coat, didn't speak, just stood at the back and watched." I pulled up another record. He wasn't just an investor. He was an old partner of my grandfather's, ousted from the board decades ago. Grandpa had written about him once, barely. Just one sentence in a journal entry. Some ghosts don't stay buried, especially when they still want a piece of the house they helped build. This wasn't just revenge. This was legacy theft. Clarice hadn't just been protecting herself. She was protecting him, and whoever he was. He'd started watching me long before Clarice ever texted me, "You're not family anymore." I looked back at the drying photo. The ink glistened in the low light like a wound refusing to close. Cale stood and pulled the photo down, slipping it into a plastic sleeve. "We need to go public again." "No," I said. "Not yet." He looked at me like I'd lost it. "Sarah, they broke in. They're threatening both of us." "I know, but if we go now, we lose leverage. They're cleaning house. We wait one more day, they'll make a mistake." He hesitated, then nodded. "So what do we do?" We track him, I said. The investor. If we find out what he wants, we take it first. Cale's hands were still trembling when he began snapping photos of the damage, the symbols left behind, the cracks in the studio's walls. I stepped outside to breathe. The wind had picked up, sharp, cool, and damp with Portland's signature threat of rain. Leaves scattered across the sidewalk like whispers caught mid-sentence. Across the street, a black car idled. Not moving, not hiding, just waiting, watching. I turned away and checked my phone. Another email. This one from a burner account. Subject line, "You won't like what he left behind." Attachment, a zip file. I clicked, fingers shaking. Inside, dozens of audio recordings, phone taps, old ones, some dating back years. My calls with Grandpa, Cale's voicemails, even Clarice's. They'd been listening for a long time, but one file stood out, dated the week Grandpa died. I hit play. His voice, tired but clear. If anything happens to me, it won't be natural. Clarice thinks she's in control, but she's not. He's back. And this time, I don't think he'll stop. I couldn't breathe. Cale walked out and saw my face. "What is it?" I turned the screen toward him. He listened, his jaw clenched. "This isn't just a story anymore," I said. "This is a cover-up decades in the making." "We expose it," he said. I nodded. But before we could move, a notification popped up. Breaking. Voss Hotels announces sudden acquisition offer. Anonymous investor bids to absorb all remaining shares. Cale looked at me, eyes wide. "They're trying to take it, all of it. Not burn it down, own it, and erase every name that ever stood in their way, including mine." The air inside the courtroom buzzed with something electric. Tension, maybe. Truth pressing up against polished wood and worn-out lies. I sat in the second row, watching the Voss legal team unravel in real time. Clarice was absent, her seat empty. Her absence said more than any witness ever could. But it was Torrin I couldn't stop watching. He looked smaller than I remembered. His tailored suit fit fine, but his posture didn't. He didn't swagger, he didn't smirk. He just sat there, eyes darting from paper to attorney to the judge's raised eyebrow, like he was trying to predict which angle would collapse first. He knew. They all knew. The court had ordered the files unsealed. Every document Grandpa left behind, every journal entry, the will, original and forged, the shell companies, the recordings, the story we'd been trying to publish, was now being read aloud under oath. My heart pounded with each word, not out of fear, but because I'd waited my whole life to be seen in this way, without filters, without manipulation, just the truth, in full light. Cale squeezed my hand, subtle and grounding. I looked over at him. His jaw was tight, eyes narrowed, but his thumb brushed the side of my finger like he was reminding me, we were still here. We were still standing. And for the first time, I believed it. The judge called a recess. I stepped outside, needing air. The hallway outside the courtroom was all polished marble and distant footsteps. I leaned against the cold wall, eyes fluttering shut. Images flashed in my mind, the cabin, the will, the photo of me crying in the hallway, Clarice's voice on the voicemail saying Cale didn't know what he'd stepped into. They'd done everything to break us, and still, we were cracking their empire open instead. Cale joined me a moment later, his camera bag slung across his shoulder like a second skin. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded, though my voice felt stuck in my throat. "Clarice didn't show up," I whispered. "She won't," he said. "Not until she's figured out who to sacrifice." "She already did," I said. "She let Torrin take the hit." Cale tilted his head. "You think he deserves sympathy?" I looked through the tall courthouse windows. Rain gathered on the glass in thick streaks, blurring the world outside. "No," I said quietly, "but I don't think he was ever the architect. He was just the mirror." Cale stayed quiet. He knew what I meant. Everything Clarice had built, she'd taught. And Torrin? He just learned faster than I did. He learned that image beat integrity, that appearances were the only currency that lasted. I learned the opposite. That truth was slow, but it had a longer fuse. I turned toward Cale. "Did the Sentinel run the follow-up yet?" He nodded. 10 minutes ago, front page. Headline, From Legacy to Liability, the Voss Hotel Empire implodes amid courtroom bombshells. I closed my eyes. Let it wash over me. We'd done it. And still, there was one thing left. One name unspoken. The investor. The man behind the man. The shadow Grandpa warned about in his journal. He hadn't shown up either, but I knew he was watching. That anonymous acquisition offer, the one trying to absorb all Voss hotels before the damage fully surfaced, it had been pulled this morning. Vanished. No press release. No buyer revealed. Just gone. He was slipping underground again, but not for long. Cale's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then handed it to me without a word. A text. No name, just coordinates. And one word. Tonight. The address was local. An office park outside downtown Portland. Abandoned, according to public records. He wants to meet, Cale said. No, I replied. He wants to be seen, on his terms. You going? I nodded. We both are. Cale gave a slow exhale. You trust him to show up? I don't trust him to do anything but watch, but I think he's been losing control. And people like that? They always want to rewrite their ending. He looked at me, quiet for a beat. And what about you? I didn't answer right away, because the truth was, I didn't know yet. My whole life had been spent reacting. To Clarice, to Torin, to silence, to shame. But now I was choosing. The courtroom was no longer my only weapon. Tonight, whoever this man was, whatever peace he still held, he would know that I wasn't backing down. I was coming to finish what Grandpa started. Cale and I walked back into the courtroom just before the judge returned. Torin's lawyer was on his feet, palms open, voice suddenly higher, reaching, scrambling. But the judge held up a hand and silenced the room. I've read the exhibits, I've reviewed the files. I will rule on the official transfer of estate assets within 48 hours. But I will state for the record, there is significant evidence of fraud, obstruction, and corporate malpractice tied to both Clarice and Torin Voss. I watched Torin's shoulders slump. For once he had nothing to say. The judge stood, court adjourned. We walked out into the wind. Cale lifted his collar. I tucked my hands into my coat pockets, heart still hammering. You ready for tonight? He asked. I didn't hesitate. Let's end this. The office building was dark by the time we pulled up. One long, silent stretch of tinted windows and faded signage. The only light came from a flickering street lamp out front, casting shadows that shifted with every breath of wind. Cale parked 2 spaces back. Neither of us spoke. I could feel my pulse everywhere. In my throat, in my fingertips, in the soles of my shoes as I stepped onto the wet asphalt. He followed, camera bag over his shoulder, but this wasn't about recording anymore. This was about ending it. The coordinates led us to the 3rd floor. The hallway buzzed faintly with fluorescent lights, most of them half dead. I could smell dust and something faintly chemical. A man waited at the far end. Older, tall, impeccably dressed. The kind of man who didn't blink at risk because he believed the world had already paid him off. I'd seen his face in the background of board photos Grandpa kept hidden. His name buried under shell accounts. His power passed down in whispers. You've been busy, he said, voice smooth like oil. I stopped 10 feet from him. You watched us, threatened us, tried to silence my grandfather. He smiled. Your mother came to me. I didn't seek her out. But you funded the cleanup, the illegal tanks, the fixer. And in return, he said calmly, I was promised full control until you complicated things. Cale stepped forward, but I put a hand on his chest. Why now? I asked. The man glanced at his watch. Because I underestimated you. I assumed you'd fold, like she did. I swallowed hard. So Clarice really ran? He nodded once. She took a payout and fled. You burned her leverage. She left the rest to me. My jaw tightened. You think this is salvageable? I said. His smile didn't waver. Everything is salvageable. Reputations, empires, even yours. He stepped closer, pulled a document from his coat. You walk away today, and I make you disappear, cleanly. No more threats, no more noise. Your work gets buried, but you stay breathing. He held it out like a gift. My fingers twitched. For a second, I stared at it. I remembered Grandpa's voice in that final recording. If anything happens to me, it won't be natural. I remembered the photo of me crying, taken without my knowledge, Cale's wrecked studio, the envelope that said he was the target. This man hadn't come to offer peace. He'd come to take what was left. I stepped forward, then reached into my coat, pulled out the flash drive Cale had copied that morning, the one with everything. Drone footage, audio, legal files, the last will, and Grandpa's voice. I already sent this, I said, to the SEC, to the press, to every board member at Voss, but I wanted to hand-deliver your copy. His face didn't move, but his silence did. It expanded between us, heavy and sharp. You should run, I said, because this time, no one's buying your silence. Cale snapped a photo, the shutter echoing like a gavel. The man didn't flinch, just turned and walked away, coat catching the hallway light like a curtain falling. We didn't follow. Outside, the rain had started again, light, misty, almost gentle. We stood under the awning. You think it's over? Cale asked. I looked at him. His face was tired, but steady. No, I said, but it's ending. 2 days later, the lawsuit was made public. Voss Hotel's board disbanded. The company was dissolved under state oversight. Clarice was never found, but warrants were issued. Torrens' assets were frozen. The anonymous investor? Blacklisted. The empire they built on secrets collapsed brick by polished brick. And as for me, I didn't take back my family name. I didn't want it. But I did take the cabin Grandpa left me. I went back that fall when the trees were starting to turn, and Cale came with me. He replaced the broken windows. I sanded the floors. We let silence exist again, but this time, not the dangerous kind. Sometimes healing doesn't come with a big speech or a clean slate. Sometimes it looks like drinking coffee at sunrise beside someone who stayed. Sometimes it sounds like wind through pine and nothing else. What I learned through all of this is that legacy isn't something you inherit. It's something you claim. Family can lie, blood can betray. But truth, it doesn't need permission. It waits, and it always, always finds a voice. So if you've ever been silenced, underestimated, erased, let this be your reminder. They don't get the last word unless you give it to them. Thank you for staying with me through all 12 parts of this story. If this hit home for you, like, comment, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. For more stories like this, make sure to watch the next video. I'll see you there.